Greetings, friends. Welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show we look at movies we love, break them apart to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined as always by my buck-toothed, mustachioed, worst going out shirt owning of all time friend and co-host,
Alex Dandino. You're welcome.
That's right, Otis, not Otis, Otis. Guys, you know, if you're here, you know, this month, the pod is a madman. Movies that place us in the POV of murderers, killers, deviants, not good places we want to be. Perhaps the scummiest neighborhood we've visited yet in POV land. Henry, Portrait of the Serial Killer, tonight's movie. As always, guys, if you like the show, and we hope you do, please take a second and leave us a rating and review, especially on Apple Podcast app. That helps us out enormously. Also, find us on any social media. We have all the stuff you have. We would love to hear from you guys. You can also email us, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. For any ideas on double features, guests, themes for the month, whatever you have, we'd like to talk about the movies you want to talk about. And if you want to see our faces and some new content, you can follow our YouTube channel, Nerd Alchemist, plural with an S at the end. All right, Alex. That's the business. Now we got to get to the real business, the scary business. Had you seen Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer before I foisted it upon you today?
No, I was actually saving it because, quite simply, I knew you were going to try to find a way to watch this for the pod. So I'm like, because like we share, you were very kind. You gave me your Shudder password long ago, and I was like, oh, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. I should watch this because Griffey always will definitely get into a show, so I'll just wait. So here we are.
Any opening salvo? First thoughts you had on this movie? It's an infamous yarn.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Michael Rooker is fantastic. Like, if you want to be honest, like, I mean, I'm not saying he's a good guy. He's a terrible person in this movie. Him and Otis are both
really. I was kind of on the borderline. We'll have to discuss.
I mean, Rooker is great. The movie itself is, it's weird. Like, I was expecting something a little more, it's really documentary-like. Like, it's kind of weird almost. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like, it has this sort of, it has a really weird documentary feel to me for some reason. Not that it is a documentary.
It's a not in on the joke, man bites dog kind of thing, right?
Yeah, kind of.
That movie's
exactly
in on
like
what
that.
it is, right? This feels voyeuristic.
This is super not. Like, there's a lot of the voyeurism in this is so, I mean, besides it being just like vicious and terrifying in a lot of respects. Like, I mean, to me, this movie's a great example of why we do this pod. Like, we watched Psycho, and I was like, this is exactly what the Film Alchemist is. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer is the real reason, though, that we started doing this show, because this is a movie that, in general, probably not a lot of people outside our general circle of Twitter fans and Instagram people have actually seen. So, to me, this is a great example to shine a light on a movie that is hard to swallow. So if you're willing to sit through something like this, I commend you. I have a kid and a wife who doesn't watch these kind of movies, so I watched this very sporadically in the time I had to myself.
Yeah, I was alone with the kids this weekend. I had to watch the kids. My wife is a nurse, so she's obviously got a lot on her mind. So I was actually watching it with headphones on my cell phone for fear, because the kids took a nap, and I was like, all right, I can turn on Henry. And I was like, what if one of those kids wakes up for like a minute and I'm not aware of it? The things they could see in this movie, I would actually be worried about. Right? So,
my kid's almost a year old, and even I'm worried about him just retaining some sort of like protracted knowledge that just
latent
tucks away
imagery
in the back
that
of
comes
his brain.
out later in the true crime documentary. Well, it was all when my dad was watching Henry for his podcast. And you're like, no, I was the worst dad ever. Yeah, I don't know, man. There are some of these movies, right? I remember I found Henry at a young age because it was one of those dangerous movies, right? an X-rated, scary, most vile thing you've ever seen. It was listed amongst those kind of movies, right? So
Right.
me and my young horror brethren, that was one of the ones we had to seek out, right? Where can we? This is back when we had to go around and look for VHSs, and then when the DVD revolution started, I don't remember Henry getting a quick DVD release. But yeah, I saw it on a VHS with some friends, right? Like a ratty old VHS that someone found. I don't even know who found it, but we were amped to watch it.
Yeah, this is one of those movies you'd easily find it like for those people in LA. If you've ever been to the Rose Bowl flea market, there's a bunch of people there who have hardcore ripped VHSs of like Nazi propaganda films. This is 100% one of those.
Henry, my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, it's let's see. Goebbels presents, Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. Cool.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, for all the movies like that, right? The dangerous movies, as they were always told to me, right? Like the ones they don't want you to see. I think this one is memorable to me in two ways. One, it's one of the rare ones that actually was as disturbing to me as it was foretold. I think it is absolutely gut-wrenching and vile and sickening, and it really makes me feel wildly uncomfortable and afraid at times. Yeah. But also, I think what is great about this movie versus a lot of those other kind of movies that I hear about, right? Like, track this down, it's so gross, you'll never believe it. This one has really powerful storytelling happening at the same time. And I think the art of this movie elevates it above the kind of smut film that it was pitched to a lot of us as.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you tuck away that this is based on real people, which is pretty horrifying, that alone makes this movie scary and also worth a watch. I think about the movies that you've had me watch on this show that are kind of I would never seek this out. And the only one that ever comes to mind is really Taxidermia. And even then I'd be like I'll never watch that again. There's no reason for me to ever watch that movie again in my entire life.
Someday, but you'll want that sweet throw up scene again.
Right, but Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer is another movie I'd probably never watch again, but I would absolutely tell people to watch it. That I think is kind of the strange thing about Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer is that while I plan on never watching it again, just because it is super heinous, it's pretty much what you think it is. If you think about a movie about a fucking serial killer who's just traversing America, here's that flick. But
it starts strange for that kind of a movie, right? This movie does not begin the way you would imagine this movie starts.
No.
And I think, honestly, the most chilling parts of the movie to me are not, as the film goes on, obviously the graphic violence and brutality becomes more and more pronounced. But there is a technique that is utilized in this movie, which is they're always trying to put a wall of separation between us and the act as it occurs, right?
Right.
In the opening scene of this movie, right, is just this young lady dead in the sound of nature with the bird chirping, and we're slowly pulling back, right? And a lot of this opening scene, right, becomes here is a guy just meandering around Chicago.
Right. And
we will cut to a scene of horror, right? The one that really sticks out to me is the lady who's tied to the bathroom sink, sitting on the toilet, but with a Coke bottle, somehow stuck in her face. But what happens is we play these slowly drifting spirits, right? Because there's a voyeurism to it, because some of them were moving towards the body, some away, right? So it's not like we're in the POV of a spirit leaving its body. Sometimes we're coming in close to see, which is gross.
Right, yeah.
And what happens is when they mix it with just the sounds of nature or this kind of ghostly echo of what happens, and then you just place it, you cut it and juxtapose it with this, here's a guy just ordering breakfast, complimenting the waitress, right? Leaving a tip. Yeah. Just a normal dude with high waters walking around unassuming. And to me, those scenes, it's one of those, because when this movie's pitched to you, you assume it's going to be bloody, graphic, horrible violence. And for the most part, the scenes that are the most chilling to me are, because this is the thing, when they later show violence in this movie a lot of times, well, it's brutal, right? And some of the torturous acts are really hard to watch. there is a kind of quickness to some of the kills, right? Like there's a lot of like neck snapping going on, right? Like MacGruber neck snaps and shit like that, and you're like, all right, I guess his is more of a rip than a snap, but neither here nor there. But it's so fast, right? Whereas the start of the movie says here, it kind of does the exact opposite of what you think, which is here, look at the end result, and now we will let your mind run wild. So me as an audience member, I am creating all of this terror and all of these like how the fuck I will always be haunted by the image of that Coke bottle my whole life.
I think that's probably the thing that makes the movie the most unique itself, is that the juxtaposition a couple of times, like between like the like normal mundane things that Henry does, which again is like, why do we have to watch this? It's like, oh, because you're supposed to see that he can totally blend in with normal people even though he's a fucking monster. Like this is sort of like to me, this is like the inverse of Hannibal Lecter. Like Hannibal Lecter to me is always one of those guys people were like, oh, who would have known? It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Hannibal Lecter is Hannibal Lecter. There's never a time where you weren't, I bet that guy's not a creep. He totally
speaks in villain monologue. That's a red flag.
Yeah, he literally monologues as a villain in life. Like even before anyone knew he's a bad guy. Like that is what I think is the best thing about this movie, is that you're right. Like the very beginning, that juxtaposition is very scary, but then like the juxtaposition of just stillness versus violence is the real, like, again, like you said it correctly. It's your mind runs wild with that opening scene. So like, you're like, holy shit, if that's what he did, how did it happen? But also, what the fuck else is this movie going to reveal that this guy's capable of?
Then they cut to like 6 more still dead bodies, right? And it serves many purpose. One is, as we gently float, we get this massive finality, right? That this was once a vibrant, living human that is no more, right? A lot of movies have the effect of piling up bodies, and it's like, oh, there's another one, there's another. They make you sit and stare at this fucking, like, I remember this is something that will always haunt me. I'm one of those people, like, this week I saw a video on YouTube, right? Or Facebook. I was just scrolling, and some girl snaps her leg in half. And I'm like, why is that online? And, like, I've got these, like, phantom pains, and, like, I'll have, like, a panic attack thinking about it for, like, 10 minutes, and I can't escape it. It's happened to me for, like, 10 days in a row. And so there was this DVD that my friend got, Hollywoodland, I think it was, right? About the Hollywoodland murders. And on that footage, in the DVD extras, was just crime scene footage. And I remember watching it one night. We were all drunk, like, watching through it. And they just showed, like, a dead body. Just, like, sat on a dead... And we all got... we had to turn it up. And this movie does that, where it really nails home the cost of this, right? Because now you're looking at this. This was once a person with a life and whatever, you know, bills, family, whatever, you know, their situation may be. We don't know. But now they are just this degraded thing, right? They're dehumanized while we are we sit and ponder all their humanity. Like the one that struck me was when we see him hunting, right? He's in the mall parking lot and looking in his rearview mirror. That becomes so scary, not because we've seen him in this violent rage, because we still don't know it's him, right? We just assume because he's on the poster and whatever. We just see a guy cut in with those images, and we're now imagining him as this, you know, giant manifestation of evil. And later when he goes and gets that lady, right, he just walks right past 2 kids playing catch. He doesn't have a mask. The only thing he needs as a defense is, oh, I'm here for a job. That she clearly didn't call for. And that's how easy it is for him to get in. The next time we see her, faint echoes of a fight, cord around her neck, and cigarette burns all over her body. And you're like, that's a mom in the middle of the suburbs who we see has a husband, we know has friends, there's kids playing catch right outside.
I mean, that is probably, like the unsettling violence of, like we talked about with Psycho, is like Marion Crane's whole thing is like, she's a bad guy. She gets what she deserves, like so on and so forth. Like we're kind of like, we pondered about whether or not she did, but like regardless, like the idea, the original intent is that she did something wrong. So the idea is that, you know, she's not necessarily. That's
what led her in the path of the predator, right?
Right. That's why she's like, that's why she's in the crosshairs. This one is just like brutality at its worst, where anybody, it could be anyone, any one of us could have let the wrong person in, and that's part of that's our life. Like, that's what it is. And I think that's the thing that makes it scariest, is because the banality of our lives can be cut so short so quickly by this person who, like, it's not even to prolong his life. There's no sort of like weird ritual or anything like that. It's simply violence.
Yeah,
and that in and of itself is terrifying.
Right. Well, the scary thing is that the movie tries, it plays with that idea, right? Because all of these killers that we've talked about in these movies, right, they have like an original moment where they kind of break and become what they are, right? Peter Lorre and M talks about, like, this is why I can't help it, right? I'm born with it. There's a voice in me. And Peeping Tom, right? My dad experimented on me. In Psycho, I killed my mom and her lover, right? Like, that's what started it out, right? After his dad left, he killed his mom and lover. This one really fucks with that idea of there's some kind of root cause of evil versus there are just evil humans, right? In a twofold manner, which is, one, Henry can't keep his story straight on how he killed his mother. He tells Otis one story about a baseball bat.
He says he stabbed. He said he shot her. He said he killed her with a baseball bat. Like, there's like a bunch of different stories.
He can't remember, right? He's very determined that she was bad and made him watch sex and abused him. But they're sprinkling that in by telling us that he's lying.
Right. So, like,
the fact that he wouldn't remember that, right? He's lying about it. And why? So then he becomes this wildly unreliable narrator, and that happens after she confesses the sins of her father, right? So maybe this is some kind of, he's reciprocating back what he thinks she wants. So we never can trust that there's a true origin of what Henry is versus this is just his nature.
Right. I mean, I think that's the thing. That's always been the movie's interesting in that sort of like documentary aspect, because this is like a big nurture versus nature debate. Like, there's always been the contention among psychologists about like where psychopaths, where serial killers come from. Is there some sort of thing in their past, or are they just born hollow in a way? Like, are they born without that empathy for a fellow human being? Like, you and I talk a lot about like, oh God, these people in the movie theater just mow them down. Like, that's like kind of in good fun. Like, honestly, I'd rather just yell at them and make them feel bad about themselves. But I would never like dream of like murdering someone.
Oh, you mean people talking in theaters? I was like, we never talked about mowing down theater. What do you? Woo, woo.
Oh, yeah, sorry, no. Talking about like just like people who talk in front of us in theaters. We talked a lot about that. On
yes,
this show.
I specifically said on this show, if I had the Invisible Man suit, in the Invisible Man, there would be 3 less old women in the world. All of them with a hard karate chop right to the throat.
Right.
I hate
all
movie
of that
talkers.
is like,
I'm with you.
All of that is in good fun. But in general, like, we'd probably just yell at them and make them feel bad about themselves. This is like the best. This is probably the most entertaining and least like psychologically aggravating conversation about nature versus nurture, because like Becky and Otis are particularly have this really weird, like, there's a little bit of incestuous issue going on there. Like, they've had they have a lot of horrible things that have happened to them, but they never fucking change their story. It's Henry who doesn't really have a story himself. And in that regard, it's sort of like the Joker almost, like relating it back to another character who changed their story considerably throughout the movie. You never really know. So him being an unreliable narrator makes him almost, it makes him completely unsympathetic. So now we're following someone around in a movie who literally we are not rooting for ever to figure anything out.
And it's strange because in a way the movie's not a portrait of a serial killer, right? It's the portrait of this man he is projecting to the world. Because this is the thing they give us, and this is why I think that the nature of serial killers is attacked in an interesting way, because in the room we have the 3 paths, right? People who suffer these traumas, right? Which is, I will bear it. It'll hurt me and scar me, but I will bear it and try to move forward and do as well as I can, right? That's Becky. And then Otis becomes kind of a criminal and we get the hint that there's bad stuff. He's obviously a pervert with the high school kid, but he's not what Henry is, which is like pure, just hunting evil.
Yeah, but Henry is pure evil.
Right, but then we
Otis
see how quickly Otis takes to it.
Just like
when someone just tells him, oh yeah, you can just kill people, and he goes, what? And then he embraces it so rapidly that the film is actually telling us right? That maybe that is just in us, right? And all you have
It's
to
sort
do
of
is
this
give it
odd,
permission.
like, of mice and men thing, like this Lenny thing going
Yeah.
on, you know? It's that's the thing that, like, most struck me is I was kind of like, oh, this has, like, a weird, like, Lenny mice and men vibe.
Yeah, well, because this is the thing, right? The first scene where we see actual violence, and this is what I said, it's so muted, right? Which is they have a fight, right? After Otis wants to kiss his own sister, and Henry, like, yokes him up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because this is the weird subplot of Henry trying to be chivalrous good guy for her and assuming that she's eating it up, right? She clearly wants him to be that guy because her own guy back home, her baby daddy, gave her a black eye. We find out later he's a fucking murderer. You're just like, this poor Becky, oh my God. That she's so desperate to find a better way that she trusts this fucking monster in this very thin facade that he has, right? And so Henry is always this lurking evil. But what we see with Otis, who presumably grew up in a similarly bad situation like Becky, is that after they have that scene with the prostitutes, right? So the violence is so fast, right? It's kind of like you hear them almost fucking, and it looks like they're almost seated, and then he takes them down. And by the time the camera gets to the side profile of the car, presumably she's dead. She's been choked to death, neck snapped. The hooker that Otis has looks back, starts to panic. He grabs her. Quick neck snap. Like, it's that fast.
Yeah.
And then we just watch him drag two dead bodies out like they're actual pieces of trash and lay them in the alley, right? We cut to Otis in the, he's trying to calm him down with like burgers and milkshakes and fries, whatever. And when they're sitting in the room, he goes, Otis, you've never killed anyone? He's, I didn't have no choice. And so even Otis, right, a man who has taken life according to his account, he sees the difference. He knows specifically what the difference is between his criminal behavior and Henry. He knows what the fuck Henry is. And the strange thing is that he sees it, and he himself, a murderer and a criminal, knows this fucking extra beast is upon him, and he just willingly embraces it.
Well, and I think that's that weird like thing of pure
so that
pressure.
throws out nurture essentially, right?
Right. I mean, like that makes someone.
I guess the argument would be is that if Otis was the product of a bad home, that the nurture element was already in place.
I guess. I mean, the other question I have is, do you because I was wondering, do you think if Otis had met somebody else entirely, like if this was like Henry Portrait of a Philanthropist, would Otis have taken to that?
Otis is like, I do love feeding people. This is swell.
Right. But that's what it is. Like,
life. No,
that's the question.
I think Otis was already a criminal, right? And he was definitely perverted with the high school kid. When the kid punched him, do I think there's a world where maybe, like, that's a better question, right? Would Otis have still wanted to and think about killing that kid if he had not been given permission to kill by Henry? My thought is yes. Eventually, a guy like Otis is going to kill someone, right?
100%.
But again, like he said, he's going to kill someone that he knows in a fit of rage or passion. That's how Otis will kill.
Right.
The difference is, right, is when Henry's training him and he does the MO thing, right? Like, don't always use knife, stab, choke. Like, change it up because then they have no way of connecting it. That to me was a scene as they're filming a guy getting bugged. You're just like, what the fuck? Yeah. Henry is so disconnected from his deeds, right? There's no it's not orgasmic release with him. We see all tension the whole time.
Right. Well, to me, it's like, and this is why I think actually the title is kind of apt. Like, Portrait of a Serial Killer is about, like, it's about what it is like he describes, like, you have to have a different MO every time you do something so that the cops never connect you. Like,
right.
Cool. Yeah, that makes, which in regards to that would make him not a serial killer because serial killers have specific MOs. It's the ritual that they go for, not the actual kill itself.
Right.
So to me, what this really is about is it's about Henry's world and moral relativism. Because for Henry, the like relativistic nature of human life is everything is so sort of up in the air. it's a tenuous partnership at best. The decent thing and human life, like he fucking gets pissed at, he fucking kills those two old people in the liquor store. Like that's like towards the beginning of the movie.
Right.
And then he kills
we also
prostitutes.
see him kill a guy over a TV who insults him, right?
Right,
so
exactly.
There is an extra level of...
So then you're like, okay, eat the rude.
Yeah.
I can understand that. Like there's some sort of moral relevance to that because, that person's rude. Like they deserved it for some reason. Like nothing that bad, which by the way, that might be my favorite kill in the movie.
Well, that's the one kill that we see unwashed by some kind of barrier.
Yeah,
and it feels the silliest, right? Like it's drop the TV on his head, barbecue him. There's blood everywhere. Every other kill in the movie,
Otis, plug it in.
Yeah,
I mean that's
plug it in. It's awesome. I love it, but that's the one scene.
But it is
where
super
it loses,
hokey,
right? But it loses that voyeuristic documentary vibe, and you're like, oh, now I'm watching like the unleashed madman who's like stabbing the fat man with his own tools and.
Right, but I mean, even
over
still,
but that's what I mean. Isn't that weird though? That's the one kill of the movie because the prostitutes in the car were obscured by shadow and car. The others are dead bodies. Even Otis later, we don't like see it all the way. It's kind of like behind him, and Henry's crawling to him. There's always some kind of lair against the reality of what he is, except for that one scene and the fact that it's a big fat rude guy and not the seemingly, upstanding suburban mom. I thought that was a really weird choice.
I mean, I think it's a great choice because it makes all of the other kills that much more brutal and terrifying because we see this, which to me is like, okay, so he like stabs a guy with what did he have? Like looked
like a little solder gun.
Yeah, it was like a little solder gun. And then it's out of like a fucking slasher movie. It
felt like how Otis would retell a story, right?
Yeah, that's a great.
It's like Otis, like
it's like
I'm a badass.
It's almost the way, it's like the way you would retell a story to make yourself seem more badass.
Yeah,
like that. There's no way that's actually what happened. Probably the reality of what happened is much more terrifying. Like, oh yeah, like we never plugged it in because it wouldn't have mattered because this guy's head was literally Jello. So like. Because the fucking tube TVs are like 4,000 pounds back then.
Yeah, even that little $50 TV would have been like a 15-pound instrument of death.
Right. So, like, to me, man, that's a perfect way to put it. It's literally like a retelling from Otis's perspective saying, oh, yeah, this is sort of how it happened. But it is so corny. Like, again, it reminded me of like something out of like Chopping Mall or any of those like great like 80s like slasher flicks where you're like, this is corny as hell. Because it doesn't fit any of the other...
no other criteria of the movie. Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
Imagine the scene, right? There's this great scene where we kind of get a little glimpse into Henry, right?
Right.
Which is don't kill someone you're connected to, the little kid you just creeped on and he punched your nose. Just go out in the world and there are victims everywhere, right? So they do the thing with the car. And the guy comes out, this, normal guy, seemingly good Samaritan. He's like, hey, man, do you guys need help? And Henry looks at Otis and he says, Otis, do you need help or do you got this? And Otis pulls out a gun and just shoots the guy. It's so matter of fact. That's the interesting duality of the movie, which is we spend a lot of time with horrifically mangled still bodies. And the violence we see is so quick and just matter of fact, right? Boom, boom, boom. Mm-hmm. There's no torturing. There's no ritual. There's no Michael Myers like setting him up. Right? Like some of the others feel that way where they're kind of like decorative in how he's laid them out, where it feels like, oh, this is more of a disgusting ritual thing, right? The kills we see on screen are so fast, except for that big fat guy, which is why that one does not ring true as one of the kills to me.
I mean,
now maybe because now this is the first time that Otis is jumping in. That's why I was like, maybe this is Otis's perspective.
Well, this is the first
like
time.
You said, the fact you said it just feels hokey is exactly
absolutely.
Right.
Like it's one of those things you put in a movie so that you can say, like, think about it. Like when you walk, like if you're walking out of a rated X movie, because this is like the 80s. If you're walking out of a rated X movie, that's the thing you're going to take away is like, what was the movie like? Oh, I don't know, man. But there's this one scene where they smashed a TV over this guy's head.
And then plugged it in.
Yeah. Fucking brutal, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's absolutely one of the things you say to your friends because it sticks in your mind as a weird, corny kind of image.
Yeah.
But, like, what I wouldn't tell someone is like, well, the first shot of the movie is literally a woman dead sitting there with a Coke bottle stuck in her face.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not going to see that. Like, that's exactly the way you don't go see a movie.
Right. And that is that's the weird duality to me, right? Because the other kill where we really see a lot of graphic violence is the family in the suburbs, right?
Yep.
And this is where Otis and Henry, but this is where they make another fascinating choice, right? Because it's obvious how abhorrent this scene would be to witness, right? You know, or to just know that this has happened in real life, right? It's the kind of thing that even a lot of movies don't show us in a realistic fashion, right? A lot of movies have scenes like this, but it's Jason or something like that, right? Something that gives you that layer, right? Their layer is we're going to make it feel as real as possible, but you're going to watch it as a recording on TV, right? So we see Otis holding a mom, playing with her body. They're degrading her. It's abhorrent. We turn over to the husband who's hearing his wife's screams of agony. He's obviously bloody under his head thing. You know, he gets kicked. But then the scene takes just this absolutely gut-wrenching turn when the son walks in. And you see just this real life and death fucking struggle of him and Henry. And the part of that scene that just broke my heart is when the mom, who's in so much danger herself, is just reaching out with her foot, trying so desperately to get this guy off of her son.
It's just so brutal. Like,
that's what I mean. It's so repulsive that I think in a lesser movie, that's where you go, I don't need this shit. And he would turn it off.
I mean, I feel like, like, this is a good thing to discuss, too, is like, what about this? Because honestly, I had a lot of trouble watching it. Like, that, like, above all else, like, I had to, like, really, like, we have a new kid. I don't want my wife thinking about stuff like that. I literally, like, she walked into the room, I turned it off. Like,
this is what we talked about, that Stuart Gordon quote, right? Is we like horror because it's a dress rehearsal for our own deaths, right? That's what he said, and I think it's a brilliant thing. Is we like the big kill, right? A lot of horror movie audiences, we like the gore, we like the kill. But what I think is, and what I think this movie was self-aware enough to know is, we always like that distance, right?
Totally.
Like if you watch a brutally violent movie like Human Centipede, there's a layer of outlandishness, right, that protects you from the vulgar realities of what that film is. Totally. Same with Saw, this and that. There's these big, silly gadgets, and you're like, all right, it's okay if her face gets ripped in half. Because, you know, it's a game. Clearly, that's not the easiest way to kill a person. Ha ha ha. Some yucks, right? This is one of the... I don't know any audience member that watches this and is like, oh, I'm getting a lot of viewing pleasure and joy out of that scene. Now, if you use it in the way they did, right, which is now you're just getting a lens on this character that you're kind of watching, and Michael Rooker is just this amazing brooding character, and Otis is this big goofball. And again, we've seen a lot of the consequences of what they've done, right? These bad guys in the world, how much evil they can spread.
Right.
And then we see the fat guy kill, and again, they did everything they could to take any possible sympathy we could away from that guy. Because all of us were kind of like, I'm not that sad. That guy doesn't exist anymore, right? They made him as big a piece of shit as they could and gave him the hokiest, funny death possible. This one is so different. There is no joy in this. But what it's saying is, and again, this is, a lot of these movies have this one scene or these shots that are saying, hey, horror audience, this is your reality check too, man. This stuff that you really like spurs from these fucking places of real world tragedies.
Right.
And so in that scene, we're watching and we're fucking horrified. And when we cut to Otis and Henry, we see ourselves a bit, right? And that's what it's doing is taking those fucking men and their vile, evil nature and saying, hey, man, that's in you. Yeah. We're literally watching it through their eyes, and that's us, man. We're on the journey with them.
Well, I mean, the scene with the guy with the TV is literally like horror, like, all right, here we go, queuing up.
That's the fun horror stuff we all love. That's a Friday the 13th kill.
Exactly. Like that's like the part where you're like, all right, now we're in the mix, And then we get to this.
Like
and
when
you're just
Chucky
like,
bashes that nanny's brains out, or his, mom's friend's brains out and throws her out the window. You're like,
Right.
the kid's alone with a serial killer doll. This movie's great. An innocent teacher just gets fucking murdered and you're laughing. This is one of those horror movie scenes where if I ever met a person who's like, I love that fucking scene, man. That's my favorite scene. I'd be like, well, you can't ever be around me. Like, just.
Well, we are not friends. I respect your choices, but we are not friends ever.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for listening. Bye.
Yeah, that's like, it's one of those things where, that probably will stick with me more than anything is just like, more so than the Coke bottles thing in the very beginning it's when Otis like plays with the mom like that.
Oh my god, yeah.
That to me,
but that's what it is.
It's the most brutal. It's the most brutal thing I've ever seen on a movie.
It's just degrading a mom, right? We all have a mom. We all,
exactly.
Some of us are parents, and it's just degrading the ideals of the society, right? And so,
absolutely,
there are these people, and in that moment, watching them through the TV, and we're watching them through two TVs, obviously. It's taking us so far out and saying these aren't people. These are just these fucking evil things that exist amongst us, right? These viruses in our society. And be careful that they're not closer to your heart than that you think they are, right? Because again, I think this movie makes a big play that evil is just nature, right? That there are just some of us put here to purge the rest, right? And be these horrible... And I don't know why that's the case, but that seems to be at the movie. The movie doesn't make a good case that Henry could have done better, right? Because we see Henry kind of play the straight, right, with Becky.
Well,
and seemingly try to be chivalrous with her. But when you see him on that
Henry's
tape,
trying to do.
But once you see, but that's what I mean. All the other scenes, you're like, he's still trying with Becky, and there's almost this perverse. Could they make it? Like, could he be a better guy? When you see that scene. All of your illusions of the better half, right? The better angels of Henry's nature, as it were,
right?
Being pulled forth by Becky, you're like, nope.
Yeah. Well, you think about it too. Is like most serial killer movies we watch, we do see these people are like tortured. Like it's always these tortured souls who like. I keep coming back. Like a lot of the stuff that I saw, particularly after like with the Suburban Family. Reminded me a lot of like the Red Dragon stuff. And I thought a lot about that because Dollarhide's supposed to be this like tortured soul. Like he was abused by his grandmother or mother or whatever, all this other shit. Like we're supposed to see these people as damaged creatures, tortured souls. And Henry might tell those stories, but again, because he changes it so often, just the detail of how he killed her, that you're right. Like that is something that you should remember. So like, because of that, my empathy for him switches off almost immediately. So all I'm thinking about the whole time is like, this is an unsympathetic person. Like whatever happened to him that caused him to be this way, I kind of don't care. Like he's just a bad person now.
And also you never get that respite, right? There's like very small amounts because Psycho, Peeping Tom, they'll have these respites of people trying to find out who the evil guy amongst them are, right? So it gives the audience a place to sit with normal people and be like, oh, thank God. This movie has maybe one or two scenes where Becky's looking for a job and like hearing gossip. And for the most part, though, we are just with one of these two despicable human beings. The entire we are hunting with them. We are out, disposing of bodies with them. And that is the part that is so different about this movie, right? Is that they never really say, hey, we get it. This is not okay. Right? Again, they try to protect us by putting layers between us and the act. But I think, again, and as much as I think this scene is abhorrent, I think it is a somewhat important scene narratively because, again, it really reinforces just the sheer reality of this. And again, this is a narrative, fictional film. And the guy who this movie's based on was a complete fucking liar and full of shit and maybe killed one person ever, right? He took credit for hundreds of murders, but that never happened. So, but that's just the idea that this man exists, right? And I think that's the thing. If we're going to play with it and say, hey, we're going to show you these dead bodies and we're going to have a fun kill with the fat guy, At some point, you have to bring home, in a way that's undeniable to everyone watching, the impact of these kind of people.
Totally. I mean, that's like that is the real. I guess I don't know if I'd go as far as calling it genius, but that is the real like art of this movie, particularly.
But that's what I mean, right? Is there are other movies that would play that straight up in the room. We're watching it from the camcorder, not the camcorder to the TV to our TV, but the camcorder, right? Like we're right in there. We're the hand that's reaching out and grabbing. There are movies that would go there because they need to shock us more, right? I think this didn't feel like that, right? Like we just unnecessarily need to repulse you. This felt like it had a very important
I mean,
message.
There's a reason to
and then
see
cutting
that
to those schlubby dipshits with their mouths wide open on the couch reinforces that to me, right? Because we cut over and like, oh, look at these two fucking dipshit Al Bundy everymen. And then we have to mesh that with the two men we just saw on that fucking screen. That's why it works for me.
Well, not only that, but then like the other thing that works for me is that like because they're literally watching it slackjawed the way we'd watch like I don't know, like any number of Netflix series, like any number of like I think of like Andrea and I watching Tiger King for the last like week. We're just like it's the same thing though.
Fuck?
Like I should be like, and I'm like obviously there are moments where I'm shocked, but I'm literally sitting there just like I'm like the information's just passing into my brain. That's exactly how these guys are focused on a video of a murder they committed so heinously. And it's just like it's nothing. Like that I think is probably the scariest part is like that is their normal, which is terrifying.
Well, you know, it struck me in a weird way too, because it feels like a lot of these killers have these great memories of these moments, right? These hyper cinematic recollections of these, because this is the moment they waited on. To me, there was something extra creepy about the way Otis wanted to watch it frame by frame, because it jolts it out of the reality of the act, right? Now he's just getting flashing images. So maybe even Otis needed a barrier between him and what he was watching. He wanted to watch it a lot, but maybe it was in this did that really happen moment. And I maybe that's too much, right? Because he was clearly very excited. And Henry actually had to shut him down in the video. Yeah. Again, one of those like faux chivalrous moments of Henry like, hey man, come on, that is too much. It's like, you could have said that like a half an hour ago, Henry. I don't believe you.
What about at the beginning of the movie, huh? Don't you think a Coke bottle's too much?
I don't know, man. But it's fascinating the way that they and again, I think that is the important thing, that the filmmaker is acknowledging the despicable nature of it, but the necessity of it, you know, by, hey, I will help protect you with art and technique.
Yeah. I mean, I think I mean, the movie is really about the breaking down of the barrier we all experience watching movies like this.
Yes.
So to confront us with the reality of it, truly like something that is this horrific becomes reality in the theater itself. To confront us with it and say like, all right, well, that like nebulous screen is down and you're just watching a murder now. Now you're just like part of a snuff film.
Yeah.
How do you feel? And
it's one of the scariest scenes I've ever seen in a movie, because it feels so very real.
Absolutely.
It feels like something you could just see like on the news, man. And that's what's scary, right? Like there are filmmakers like a Rob Zombie, he does like high graphic, high intensity in the room violence, but sometimes because of the amped up nature of it, it seems unreal, and that's okay. This one is just not that.
This one's just real.
Yeah, and then there's the insane. Once we get to the ending, man, the movie really starts moving fast. So Otis completely devolves after this, right?
Right.
What do you think happens if Otis doesn't wake up in that room? So they come home, right, from their fancy steak dinner. And she said her baby daddy going to jail. She's like, Henry, come with me to Side Fast. He's like, all right, let's go eat a steak dinner. They come home.
Yeah.
Otis fell asleep watching his frame by frame like a creep. He goes in with the sister. What do you think happens if Otis doesn't wake up there?
I mean, sorry, I'm having like if he doesn't wake up with
This is
Henry
where Henry and the sister are like borderline about to hook up. And Otis comes in and interrupts them like a creep because, that's his brand.
So if Otis doesn't go in the room or if Otis doesn't
wake up, that was like one of those scary what ifs of the movie today. Can Henry go through with it in a normal way?
Right. I mean, to me,
he couldn't wait to run out of that room, it felt like.
Well, and that's interesting because, like, really this is a question about Henry rather than, like, I mean, I think Henry could have gone through with it.
I don't think Henry could have hooked up with her there.
I mean, I think he could have. I think he would have killed her right afterwards. But
yeah, see, I think that might happen. They never quite get into the full, like, what's going on with him. But he looked, because you see earlier when they're dancing on camera and he's like, enough. And, like, he sits on the couch, she sits by him, and he scoots away. I think he can tell, hey, man, don't start that engine, because that is the murder machine engine, right? Like,
right. I think that's what it is, too, is, like, I think if
he couldn't wait to run out of there and tell that guy, fuck the bears, and stalk the dog lady, right? Like,
but that's because the engine's been turned on, and I think, like, that's... Because then, like, think about it. Then, like, you've been caught, and also he's violating one of his rules, which is like never kill someone that you're connected with. So conceivably, Henry absolutely would have. Henry 1,000% intended to kill her. So Otis walking in.
I wondered if Otis doesn't walk in that night, and maybe they're able to have sex, or maybe he just goes in his room and she can leave the next day. If there's a better ending for her, I wonder if Otis doomed both of them, right? Otis going in for just the assault is, I think Otis has been watching himself through that tape, and whether he needs a barrier from it, and he's so ashamed that now but then the going after his sister is kind of this, he's embracing this new fucking darkness.
Yeah, it's the same sort of shame spiral, I guess. I don't know, man. I mean, I think Henry.
That's another one of those like hard to watch moments.
Yeah, it's just such a. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's like.
But then she's driven to stab her own brother in the eye to save Henry,
which is weird but that also could mean
it's not that weird. She probably really was excited to stab Otis at that moment.
Well, I think it's kind of weird mainly because like it's like you kill. It's interesting. Like you think it might be like you're killing the lesser of two beasts, but really what she's doing is preventing another Henry. Because I mean, like the fact that he's with and almost to another degree, like Henry is a serial killer with like very random methodology. Like he doesn't have anything that he actually does.
Well, he is the true chaotic evil nature. Whereas Otis is now an injured, hurt man who's lashing out violently. He has no rules,
clearly
no boundaries.
Has a thing. So there's an end for Otis that ends in either murder or prison or something like that.
Right.
Henry will go on forever.
Well, there's that ridiculous scene when Otis is just like, yep, nope, and he gets away on his parole check after we've seen the crimes he's committed. And it's like that version of Otis is going away. He is playing this caricature now of Henry.
Right.
And so, but when she stabs him, and then when Henry runs over and stabs him, I think that's the first moment that she sees, oh, fuck. Right? Because Otis had the upper hand. And then when she sees that, she's like, oh, I already stabbed him in the eye. We could have just, like, gotten away. Now she's like,
but that's not what it's about, man. Yeah, exactly. Then now she's like, oh, Henry's about that life. That's what it is.
And then he goes in and just disposes. It has this very, like, piranhas turning on each other, right? Like the injured one. Because then he just cuts Otis up and fucking drops him in the river like he's absolutely nothing. Right. What did you think of the ending with the blue suitcase?
I think again, this one goes great, like cliffhanger.
Yeah.
It's not even a cliffhanger really, but like.
No, I would say it's the exact opposite. Like you've fallen off the cliff.
Right. Yeah. Like it's interesting because like. This movie's like, I think it's 83 minutes long.
Yeah.
If 100 or 109 minutes, I can't remember exactly. It might be.
It's like 80, short. 82 minutes long. Yeah, it's really fast.
Yeah. So really this movie should be like, I don't know, 15 hours long because he's never going to stop until he gets caught. So like that suitcase being left on the side of the road is A, very creepy, but B, also just like the signifier of this movie is like, oh, this was just like a quick spot. Like this is like a moment in a long line of terrible, horrible misdeeds Henry will be committing.
This one was so extra tragic, right? Because one, we got to know her a little bit. She said, and Henry's spinning her this yarn, again, very of mice and men, right? Like, who will tend the rabbits? You will, Becky. With your daughter that we'll send for, right? Arabian rabbits. And it's like, but she says, I love you, Henry. And he goes, I guess I love you too. And then we just cut to the hotel and he's staring at himself in the mirror. And she's kind of strumming on the guitar that he took off the hitchhiker earlier in the movie, by the way. Mm-hmm. And he just says, I think we need to go to bed now. We got to leave early.
But but
I think there's that moment of hope because he wakes up the next day and is just shaving. He's just shaving, right? The fact that a guy who can do that even worries about shaving.
But
right?
Look, it starts the way it ends, or it ends the way it started.
There is a brief moment in the movie where I was like, maybe he will take her with him, man. Like, why kill her right now is what I kept thinking in my. And I think that's kind of the cruel joke of the movie is we keep thinking that Becky can somehow has brought out something good in him.
Yeah, no way.
And there can't possibly be like a good happy ending where they drive off together. But when he walks out of that hotel room by himself and locks the door, that is just one of the gut-wrenching moments in cinema history to me. Because for a brief moment, she's confessed her love. She saved his life. You're like, maybe, just maybe she'll escape.
You are the only person in the history of watching this movie who thought that there was any brief moment of hope for Henry.
I wanted her to tend the rabbits. God damn it. No, I knew there was no hope that Henry would stop killing. But I didn't think he was going to kill her. I was hoping he was
1,000% nothing more resolute than as soon as they panned over to her strumming that guitar, I'm like, dead. 1,000% dead.
I'm not saying it's not the absolute right ending for the movie. I'm saying that every time I watch it, and I will say I've watched this way more than I probably should have, I still every single time have that one glimmer of hope that maybe, just fucking maybe, this time he won't fucking kill her, man. She saved him. She was good. She has a daughter.
What I'm saying is that optimism is an admirable trait that I think is fucking hilarious in a movie called Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Bitch, he meets a lot of people he doesn't serial kill in that movie. the fast-talking guy with the wad of money, the waitress. So, too, he doesn't serial kill two of the people in this movie.
Oh, great.
Maybe the lady with the dog, the guy who's a Bears fan. Now we're up to like 5 people he didn't murder.
What, are we crossing our fingers?
Maybe the 2 kids playing catch. I don't know.
It's fine. He's like Forrest Gump. He'll get to one coast and just murder his way across the country in the next direction.
He only killed like 15 people. No, I'm just kidding. But I think it's a strange feat that they accomplish in the movie. Is that this movie manages to, it specifically shows you for a fact there is no redeeming quality in this man. But yet, I still somewhat every time buy into the Henry and Becky story. And I think it's important because I think the moment I stop believing in hope for those two, then I am a brutal beast like Otis. Right? I think every normal human being watching that should hope that she gets in the car and they just go get some moons over my hammy and go take care of those horses. That's what we should want.
Yeah, we should want that. I think the expectation
I'll never stop
is pretty
wanting
low.
That. I've seen it a bunch, and I still, every time, get sad when he locks that door. I still have that, this time too? Again, Henry? Again?
Again, Henry? Damn it.
Yeah. They even had a sequel. She could have been in it. It would have been great.
Yeah, man. I mean, this movie was just like...
She's reduced to not only bloody blue luggage, but we hear the faint, ghostly sounds of the murder, man.
The movie to
and that one's weird, too, because remember, that's the only single kill of the movie where we don't see the body.
Yeah. I mean, to me, this is like it's a great movie about how completely relative human life can be to some people.
Why do you think they don't show her body at the end?
Why?
Yeah.
Because
we see every other body.
Because it's the psycho thing again. It's the edict of like, you don't have to show someone something. Like if you see a woman strumming a guitar at the end of a movie about a serial killer, and then the next thing you see is a guy who was with that woman leaving alone and leaving a bloody suitcase on the side of the road. You don't need to see anything. It's the way it starts, which is, holy shit. Like, what fucking terror lays inside that
But that's
suitcase?
the bookend, right? Henry leaving his victim in nature for the whole world to see.
Absolutely.
And the bookend image is Henry leaving his victim in a luggage that no one can see until they willingly open it.
It's the horror that is contained inside that suitcase. Unfathomable. That honestly was much more gut-wrenching than...
Is that suitcase showing that he did care a little bit? Or is that just the director, like the audience? Because I can't imagine he's saying that we don't need or want to see her at the end.
No, to me, the suitcase is simply just, he's not stopping. This is just an easy way of getting rid of someone. Like, that's really kind of what it is.
So you think it's even less human. I was saying maybe it shows he has a modicum of decency.
No way.
I mean, clearly he doesn't, so yeah.
Yeah, what are you talking about? What a movie, Jesus Christ.
I just wanted her to have those wabbits and her daughter. I must say, Becky must be one of the most tragic characters in a movie. That one is married to a man so bad she leaves her daughter behind to go to Otis to begin with. And then just happens to fall in love with a Henry.
Rough.
Brutal. That's what I would say, though, man. This movie is just full of very realistic brutality. Right?
Yeah.
And not just in the act, but in just the concept of this creature being among us, right? This Henry. And that's what I take from it, right? I don't take that the over-the-top, despicable acts, right? The moments that always will stick with me of this movie are just gently floating in the same room as the aftermath of Henry.
Yeah.
Right? I think those artistic decisions make this movie elevate above a lot of other kind of smut level films.
Yeah, I mean, I think the stillness in the horror is what really is really the gut punch of the movie. Like, nothing that you see on camera is nearly as bad as what's going on up here when you see the end result.
Absolutely not. And yeah, that's the thing. And Michael Rooker is just phenomenal in this film.
Yeah.
He's so good. And I would argue this is probably his best role, man. This is the role he was born to play. Because I think he's always been great at, he looks like he could be like an everyman that we kind of look down on. But there's just this wild intensity about him. In this movie, he plays it pretty straight, man. He's fairly subdued, and then the mask will slip. But I think I think there are a lot of people that, I think this movie has a lot more storytelling and visual power than people give it credit for. Because I understand, man, a lot of audiences wanting to be like, I don't want to sit through this shit. I get it. I do get it. But I think it is one of the best. I've always been fascinated with how far down the depths of a human being are and how close we all are to that. Someone who is there or us doing it ourselves. And I think Henry gives me a very realistic, very fucking scary and bone-chilling look into that world, but constantly protects me just enough.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably the thing the movie achieves best than anything is with absolutely no remorse.
Yeah.
Showing you someone who's this bad.
Yeah.
It's pretty terrifying.
And they never, ever, ever let me have the Henry Becky, Age of Aquarius, moons over my hammy ending that I so desire.
Never, bro.
Yeah, they probably shouldn't give Henry a happy ending. I'm kidding. That's it, guys, for Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. I hope you liked it as much as we did. I hope you appreciate this movie, man. I think it is one of those that's getting new life now. And I think this movie will be evergreen. I think this movie will work for every generation from now till eternity, man. So
it's super intense. Worth a watch.
Very good movie. We've got one more Madman Next week, we will be dropping The Vanishing, or Spurloose. I don't know how exactly you say it in the native tongue. This has one of my all-time favorite movie openings, movie scenes. It's a great ponder. The bad guy is heinous. I love this movie, man. I can't wait to talk about The Vanishing. And then we will begin our The Pod is Held Captive half of the month, right? We're doing 2 5-movie themes this month. So we're going to start off with the best person held captive movie, in my opinion, Misery. So that'll be coming at you next week. We've got other great stuff to watch. Anything you guys are watching and want to hear us cover, we'll try to get to it. Hit us up on all your social medias. FilmAlchemistPod@gmail.com. You can see us on YouTube, Nerd Alchemist, plural, with the S at the end is the channel. And please take a second and leave us a rating and review wherever you find us, guys. That helps us out a ton. Thanks for spending time with us and Henry. We hope to see you back for The Vanishing. For the Film Alchemist, I'm Josh Griffey.
I'm Alex Dandino.